Hey, Gazoo, I'm not keeping you up, eh? Hey, Gazoo, I'm not too loud? You're okay? Okay, so Gazoo's okay. So, anyway, I'll try to keep it down. I won't be too loud. Okay, Gazoo? All right, so I kind of couldn't wait to make this video because last night, Greg Manarino said something that really clicked. And there's a lot of people who've been saying stuff that kind of, you're starting to see a big slice of the pie here. Okay, right now, there could be an extreme checkmate going on. Again, we'll have to wait and see, but if I'm thinking correctly, I think there's basically another coup about to happen in the Ukraine. I think this might actually be Ukraine getting thrown on the bus. Like I said, it would be, you know, you'd have to go back to one of my older updates and look at it when I first started covering the Ukrainian crisis, you know, during the Maidan protests. And I said, look, you know, they're going to throw Ukraine under the bus at the end. This is going to fail, and they're going to throw Ukraine under the bus. So let's backtrack a bit. What's going on? Okay, well, we had Yatsenuk, okay, who tried to quit. And it's like, I quit. No, you can't. It's like, but no, I quit. You're not allowed to quit. Imagine that. You're trying to quit your job, and you're not allowed. So this is the doo-doo they're in. This is how bad it is for them. Okay, so, I mean, he's a nut job anyway, but, you know, going to try to get everybody killed. The right sector guys are basically getting ready to basically pull their supporters out of the anti-terrorism, you know, Donetsk area. The Ukraine military is becoming pretty temperamentally destabilized. Not all of them. I mean, the main back. I mean, you have to understand. You're trying to read between the propaganda on all sides, right? And there's a lot of sides here. There's not just one and two sides. There's several sides here. So the right sector guys, they're not happy. They're getting ready to basically, and this is right from the leader's mouth, saying, look, if things don't change, we're going to change the parliament ourselves. In other words, they're going to do a coup. Okay? And then last week, Poroshenko basically dissolved the parliament. So what's that all about? He meets with Putin, okay? Apparently nothing was accomplished, or was it? What I'm thinking is Putin said to Poroshenko, and we're never going to be privy to this, but I'm thinking he says, look, I can bleed you dry, and I don't even have to do a thing, okay? You know, come to my side, I'll let you save face, I get what I want, you get to, you know, trust me, he's not going to be able to save face. Considering the other guy that, you know, where is he now? The guy that, you know, Poroshenko overthrew. You know, you know what I mean? Like the guy that, you know, was semi-legit. You know, at least he got voted in at one point. You know, he could have gotten voted out, but there was, you know, a coup's a coup's a coup. And this is why I said revolution versus reset. Why revolutions are completely unpredictable, because they're not done through law and order. They're not done through rules. They're done through. Well, they use the Maidan protesters as useful idiots, is basically, and they're still there, you know. And the Maidan protesters are also saying, "Hey, look, these guys didn't deliver what they said," you know, and they're cracking down on us with these Kiev 1 and Kiev 2 groups, which are basically the right sector guys. But eventually, those guys are going to turn again. I mean, you kick a dog enough and train it to bite people, eventually it's going to bite you, you know. And that's exactly what's going on here. These people, again, I don't pity them in the sense of, you know, they didn't do it to themselves. But again, not knowing all the facts or who they're up against, and I can understand why. I mean, it's not like they have the, you know, the right to the press that we have here. So, I mean, all they get is propaganda. But I feel really bad for the Ukrainians because, I mean, they don't know what's coming to them. They're not going to know what hit them. And the thing is, it's coming from them at all sides. On Alex Jones yesterday, there was a lady that called in from Canada, and you have to understand, Canada has one of the largest Ukrainian populations outside of the Ukraine, about 1.2 million people. And it's a long story, but basically, Ukrainians started showing up in the 1920s and 1930s during their, you know, the big problems they had over there. And there was a bit of a scare in Canada at the time because they were worried about the infiltration of communism to Canada, because again, we had like a 60 million person population or something like that. It wasn't very high, and they have an influx of people from a, you know, a communist kind of country was a very, very terrifying thing for Canadians. So there were worker rights groups and stuff like that that ended up in throughout Western Canada. And of course, there was a political party that got spin off of that. That was the NDP. That's why I say they are communist, socialist communist, because that's their origins. Okay, and a lot of people don't know that, but now you know. So be careful who you vote for. It's good to educate yourself on these things. So anyway, these people settled in here, and you go to Winnipeg, you either got a Ukrainian or you got a native. That's pretty much one of the two. Those are the two populations out there, and. Many people here, of course, as soon as the Maidan protests kicked off, obviously they're up in arms and said, "Oh, no, we're not going to have this. We're going to have freedom for the Ukrainians." And then you had that, Soros group, one of their endowment groups, I think it was Endowment for Democracy, one of those ones. Victoria Nuland out there giving out, tea biscuits and stuff like that, homemade tea biscuits. And then you had, George Soros funding this. I Am Ukrainian video with that beautiful Yulia girl, and they even interviewed her here in Canada on Sun News, and she brought up a dandy point. She goes, "I'm very grateful that people around the world have shown support for my country and my people. And I'm also very happy that, people are getting involved. But the thing is at the United Nations, you have John Kerry and Lavrov basically... and the UN basically arguing over my country, but what about my people? Don't they get a say?" I think she kind of hit the nail on the head there. No, you don't. No, you don't. And it's like I said all along. And again, this is something that a lot of probably Canadian Ukrainians are not aware of. And it was kind of made a little bit clear with this lady talking about, and she still had the Ukrainian accent. So I mean, this lady's, she's probably not Canadian born, she's from Ukraine, you know what I mean? And it sounded like an older lady, and she knew her history very well. And again, you have to understand, the Ukraine has a lot of bad blood between Russia and stuff like that. And it goes back, hundreds of years, Viking Group A fought Viking Group B, you know what I mean? Like, that's kind of the history that Norway and Sweden used to fight each other at points, I mean, that whole Europe... Every country in Europe is pretty much, it's almost like WW3 wrestling. This week you're going to fight those guys, next week you're going to fight those guys. And that's the way Europe used to be. Europe was a very bloody, the last past 1,000 years or 1,500 years have been pretty bloody in Europe. And it's settled down in probably about the last past 500 with a few big skirmishes. Okay, we're going to just go from, the 1900s. We have, what was that skirmish called? It was a doozy. Oh yeah, World War II. Yeah, so that happened. So this lady starts talking about this stuff, the history, don't call us Nazis, we're not Nazis. We were caught in a rock and a hard place. And she makes it, I mean, picture your country being caught between Joseph Stalin and Hitler. Do you want the Marxist or the dictator? You know what I mean? You have to choose a side. And she, and everybody knows that history. This is the thing that some of the Ukrainians are blinded by, I think, is that they can't see that the new boss is the same as the old boss. And, yes, Joseph Stalin would have been terrifying to live under his regime. I mean, the worst thing that could ever happen to you is Joseph Stalin be your friend. You know what I mean? Like that'd be the worst thing yeah, I like you. You live now with me in building. Yeah, be careful what you say. Well, even if you don't say something, you look like you're planning something. Have him killed. That's what Joseph Stalin used to do. Now Hitler, are you with us? Load the MG. Oh, no, sorry. Colonel Klink here. Please load MG42. Yeah. Now I'm going to ask you a question, and the question is, are you with me? Is the machine gun ready? You are with me. Okay, thank you. Yeah, you're now Nazi. Hi. And I know my bad German accent's Colonel Klink. But anyway, no offense to anyone. I mean, people got broad shoulders if you can't take the criticism, you know what I mean? And obviously the German people now don't want that. And Angela Merkel made that very clear. We don't want a repeat of World War II. World War II was bad enough. But at the end of World War II, warfare changed forever. Nukes, right? So with that, so yes, there are people that are there in the Ukraine that are Nazi supporters, and there's a large proportion of them. But it's not the majority. The majority of the right sector guys are not Nazis, and I said it from day one. I know this. But It's the Nazi faction, the people that are children of the Nazis, their lineages to the Nazis, there's loyalty to the Nazis. They have tons of Nazi parties. Their more hatred is to the Russians. And we get that. We totally get that. And this lady makes it very clear. She goes, you don't understand what it was like to live under, again, communism or, I'd say it was fascism, Marxism. I don't know what, you could sort of call the Nazi Party an ultra-nationalist group, but they kind of, they behave, Hitler's socialist nationalist party, basically, yeah, the right part of it was very nationalist, but the practice, I mean, they controlled the farmland, they controlled this, they controlled that, they controlled everything. They thought for you. It was Marxism more than anything, So, again, a rock and a hard place. What would you do when what do you do when you're caught between two gangbangers and you have to choose a side? You know what I mean? That's the simplistic answer you can give. So this lady goes on to say more things about it and stuff like that about the Ukraine. So right now, when the Maidan protest goes on, all this bad blood gets played off this group versus that group. Okay. Now on the other side of Ukraine, okay, where she does make the point, yes, these Russians were imported. Everybody knows these Russians were imported, and they took the homes and stuff like that. But that was back then. This wasn't yesterday. This is going back, right? So the people that are living in the homes now that are Russian descendant, they didn't have anything to do with it. You know what I mean? They didn't have anything to do with that. And you could pick a country around the world. We'll even use Canada. Canada has an extremely bloody history. Most people don't know that. I mean, we took people's land at some point, but I wasn't there. You weren't there. So you can't really claim compensation for things that happened in the past. All we do is say, let's chalk this up to experience and learn from it and not do it again. That's all we can do. And that's the same with the Ukraine. I don't say easier said than done, but that's the reality, So you got the Russian people saying, hey, whoa, we're not going to go through Nazism again, Our side won, and holy geez, we're not going to go through that again, So, in the 1940s to 1950s, then you had, Khrushchev, and then you had, Yeltsin. At least Yeltsin was kind of comical in a really bubbling, but I was always afraid of him getting drunk and passing out on the button. I really was. Although Boris Yeltsin, in a drunken stupor, did call off World War III when there was a computer glitch, or it was a flock of geese. I can't remember. There was a couple of times during the Cold War where they nearly launched nukes, and they called and said, no, we're not launching on you. We're not launching on you. Please don't launch your birds. So anyway, that type of thing. And then, of course, after him, there was Gorbachev, and then after Gorbachev, I believe it was, or was it the other way around? Was it Gorbachev and Yeltsin, or was it Yeltsin and Gorbachev? I kind of, remember to lose me. And then this, ex-KGB guy comes in, known as Vladimir Putin, and he's pretty much been, running the country ever since then. So that just kind of gives you a bit, there's so much history there to go over, you can't go over it all. And I am aware of it. I do understand there was atrocities done on, the Nazis did atrocities, the Germans, or the Russians did atrocities, and I do understand why the demographic is the way it is, that yes, Khrushchev gave the Crimea to the Ukrainians, and stuff like that, but it was, my uncle used to have a great saying, it took a lot of countries to make that country, referring to Russia. And so I get that. But what people don't get that on the pro-Ukrainian side, and this lady and she summed it up, she says, I've only just found out about this Soros guy. So there's a lot of Ukrainians there that have no idea that they're being played off each other, and that's what I've been saying right from the beginning. They need to kick everybody out, and it looks like this may actually happen. I can't give you a date and time, but I'm just looking at what everybody's saying. So you got the right sector guys saying, hey, you know what? These guys didn't, it's dysfunctional. We're going to take charge here. That's a coup. That's a coup coming. Who knows when that's going to come? That'll be like, the fourth coup in the last past week? You know what I mean? You've got the Ukrainian military that is just completely demoralized with the Russians opening up a new front. Okay? And again, they can't really prove it's the Russians, but you kind of can, you kind of can't. It's not in official capacity, meaning it's not the Russian military there in official capacity. It is basically people bouncing back and across the border, getting training, fighting for their side of the country. And then, of course, you have, special forces guys that sneak in and train everybody and command everybody. Okay. Now, with that said, to give you an idea, I remember I said that, because I don't really hear a lot from Ukrainian people from the Ukraine that are boots on the ground, so to speak. And one guy said, yes, the internet is extremely heavily regulated here. He said, hi, I'm Ukrainian, and yes, the internet is very heavily regulated here. And then when I checked the comment a second time, it says, hi, I'm Ukrainian. That's it. So, take that with a grain of salt, but I'm thinking there's probably a lot of people that want to talk to me. I can't. You know what I mean? Again, someday I will not be allowed to make videos like this because it will go against some code violation. You know what I mean? Like them. Now, you probably say, yeah, but Ukraine doesn't have that kind of intelligence and can clamp down like that. Well, let's put it this way: the Maidan protesters, their cell phones, when they got within the Freedom Square or whatever it is, their phones would ring and their message would appear saying, "You are in a disturbance zone. Please leave." So every time, if they're able to send a message to the masses in their cell phone, basically hack their cell phone and send them a message, they're basically able to take down a list of names, hence why people disappear in the middle of the night. And there's nobody hiding these facts that the pro-Russian side has been people, disappearing people on that side, and the pro-Ukrainian side has been disappearing people on for their side. The special forces have been killing people left, right, center, burying them in ditches. This is all over the place. I mean, it's just a madhouse and an atrocity there. It's a Mad Max type world in the Ukraine. So I'm thinking that, okay, with that said, that's important to lead up to what I'm going into. But with what I've just told you, okay, now we see this new satellite video, okay, and Young Turks was covering this the other day, and I watched them just because they're the other side of the coin, and I just want to see how they live, that type of thing. And they're talking about, well, we got satellite imagery, but coming from a government that has lied on weapons of mass destruction, which is, I was happy to hear the guy say that, because he says, it's looking like Russia's on the ground, and I'm saying Russia's playing cat and mouse, and they're, skirmish across the border in unofficial capacity, back and forth, back and forth. But, how much weaponry is actually captured by the pro-Russian side from the Ukrainians, which a lot of it is, and other little things like, for example, Ukraine, because they just, the Young Turks guy was saying, hey, look, they don't have T-72 tanks. They're only coming from Russia. That's not exactly true, because they just bought about 50-plus tanks from Hungary. So, they do have the tanks. They do have the T-72s. Now, could these things just be parading around? And again, you're seeing footage on the mainstream media where it's saying, hey, look, Russia's invaded, but they only show Ukrainian troops. You don't really see any video footage. Yes, there's a video footage of a tank and a couple of trucks going through open field, but it can't really tell you where it is. It could be on the Russian side. It could be in another country altogether. It could be footage from last year. It's really, really hard to pinpoint. And the problem is, and this is the thing that's the problem that the Ukrainian government has, is that they can't show you any good proof or say, look, this is here's a landmark in the region. Here you go. That's Russian troops coming across the border. There is some footage of tanks and stuff coming across the border that you can say, yes, this is that region, that's there, and you can confirm that. But not every place you can. I mean, an open field looks, a farmer's field over here looks like the farmer's field over there. So it's really hard to say what's what. Again, there's propaganda on all sides, right? One thing you can confirm is that there is artillery falling on the Russian side as well as on the Ukrainian side. So you can see, okay, yeah, well, this town got devastated, and you can, people can confirm that that's that town, and that type of thing. And you're looking at about 2,000 people that have been killed on both sides, roughly. But that number is going to go really high on the Ukrainian side for their soldiers, which right now there's a draft there. People don't want to be fighting. They want to change. They didn't want to get into a war. And you have to understand, again, it really has nothing to do with the people. It's about the resources. And that's the part that a lot of people can't sink their teeth into, is that these governments, the destabilization came from the West. The East just responded to it. So I agree with Joe Scalzo. This is a Russian coup, but it's a Russian coup that hijacked the American, EU, IMF, U.S. coup. And they're saying now that the Maidan protesters that were shot, okay, were most likely shot by British rifles. Now, I'd like to know the caliber. If it was a 303, probably an old 303 British. But if it was a 308 or a 5.56, that could be a bullpup, that could be an FNFAL, that could be all kinds of stuff. So anyway, again, we're never going to. There's propaganda on all sides, but at one point, even Poland said no. It was it was the Ukrainian side that did it, or the right sector guys that did it. Again, the right sector guys are just the thugs. They're the jackboot thugs. And not all of them. I mean, some of them actually, I do agree. Like the leader of the right sector party, I think he's got the best thing. Kick them all out. Kick the Russians out. Kick them. Problem is he's just going to become a new dictator if he gets his way. But can he be any worse than Poroshenko? Poroshenko has rolled tanks into the other side of the country and is having his troops commit genocide. So bad to worse. You know what I mean? Like, who wins? Nobody wins. And again, people never ask the question: if how come the eastern side hasn't completely retaliated against the western side? Why aren't you seeing Kiev burning? Well, there's a reason why. And this is controlled chaos. This I would say, because again, Russia, they don't really have to do much. They just have to sit back and wait. But they're probably saying, guys, you just stay on your side of the fence. The people will come to you. It's the ultimate coup. And again, Russia had $15 billion to bail out the Ukraine, even though people might not have liked that. But at least they wouldn't be killing each other. At least they wouldn't be killing each other. And it got, it's a coup, counter coup, counter coup, coup, and that's the way it's going. But I'm thinking, so all this ramping up, MH17, for example, all of a sudden, like MH370, it just kind of disappeared from the news. How come? Well, maybe you knew, maybe you didn't know, but it's looking like the investigation part of it is classified now. I thought it was smoke and gun. It was the Russians and the Russian rebels. They shot it down, and that was it. Now, mind you, the Russian rebels have been shooting down, airplane after airplane in that area, and so it's not unbelievable. But there's also reports of the Su-25s and that were there, and they can kind of confirm that because a couple of days after, an Su-25 got shot down in the exact same area. The Russians said, look, here's our satellite imagery telling you what's there. There was 2 Russian Su-25s, and they were within 3 to 5 kilometers of the airliner. What I'm thinking happened is the airliner lost communications. Ukrainian pilots figured it was some sort of Russian intelligence aircraft, and they probably just shot it down. And there does appear to be, and again, this is reported, so again, nobody can ever confirm this, but it appears that 30 millimeter cannon fire, damage was observed on the aircraft fuselage, that the thing was shot down. Maybe both sides shot it down. I don't know. We're never going to know. But it doesn't really matter. All you have to look at is what is the reaction to it. A more closer to war. But here's the other thing. Malaysian Airliners, who's now laying off 6,000 people, is completely outraged by this. They're like, what do you mean it's classified? And, any one country that is involved in the investigation can call off this classified, and we'll know what happened. They're not going to do that. It's classified for a reason. And to me, I'm thinking, well, it's probably that the Russians were right on this one. That if it was a mistake, say it was a mistake. Look, if you're the Ukrainian pilot, I would shoot it down if I was a Ukrainian pilot. I couldn't communicate with the aircraft. I don't know what this thing is. My guys are down there. They're getting killed. This could be an intelligence aircraft. If I get too close to it, it could possibly have missiles and shoot me down. Got to make a call. You try to identify it. You try to identify it. That's what's going to happen. Understandable. Regrettable, but understandable. That's war. It's crappy. Now, with that said, again, Putin's now, rolled his humanitarian aid across Obama's red line, not once, and he's about to do it again. With all the things that are going on in Ukraine, tell you the truth, that's not where you should really be looking right now to figure out why the Russians are stepping up. And I think what's happening here is, I bet you in October, well, I wouldn't bet you, but I'm thinking with all these crazy things that are coming onto the news now, we're probably going to see a collapse in October. October is maybe before that, maybe after that. It's a possibility. I'm just taking a guess at it. But I'm thinking that's what a lot of this needs, because they need to blame it on the Russians. Because the central bankers, they're not going to be able to face the pitchfork revolution. And it doesn't really matter. At this point, I think enough people know that. When people, like Gerald Celente says, when people lose everything, they lose it, and they only care once it hits them in the pocket. Well, trust me, once the bail-in programs, which the DHS has now got a thing going on saying that they can just start checking out banks at random and seize assets and do whatever. And again, this is part of the NDRP. Please, people, look into the NDRP. If you're an American, you got to understand that's what you need to be afraid of. The NDAA is bad, but that's the sideshow. You really need to see the main attraction. That's the NDRP. It's a bit long-winded, but you need to see what Obama really did sign on to. And the DHS, that's what they're there for. So why would the DHS be needing to do this, right? The bail-ins are ready to go at every country. There's some countries already implementing this. Banks are already starting to crumble, and they're all linked together. So it's a mountain climber effect. One falls, they all fall, right? When they're all tied together like that. So Putin's probably knows that, okay, well, I don't care if you blame it on me or not. You know, the people can't do nothing. It's only the military part that can do something. So you can see that the central bankers really want a war to get going so they can blame the collapse on that so they don't have to take... But if a war gets going, the central bankers are not going to be safe anyway. You know, like, I'm not making any threats, but I mean, people are going to go find them. You know, while we're living in a Mad Max world, people didn't... This is why I say we must, maintain... rule of law at all costs, meaning we need to put we need to do the Iceland solution, put the corrupt politicians and bankers in jail, or they're going to get us all killed. And that includes the jackboot thugs and their families. They're going to get you killed for nothing, over a lie, And the lie is basically that money is value. Money is just a medium of exchange. The resources aren't the value. And when we're looking at it like that, you can understand what these people are after. And the Ukraine, all the bad things that are happening in the Ukraine, okay, that's going to be bad. It's going to be an east-west country at some point. But the Ukrainians right now, they're going through hell again. Again, they're caught between, instead of a Joseph Stalin Hitler gangbanger, they're caught between a Putin and Obama gangbanger and all the other crazy factions in between, right? Your source groups and all that. And again, Gaddafi is going to be the future of the corrupt elites. If they think Gaddafi can get overthrown without, blowback, well, we're seeing the blowback. Look at all the crazy stuff that's happening in Libya. Look at all the crazy stuff that's happening in Syria. Look at all the crazy stuff that's happening in Iraq. ISIS is not an accident. These guys came out of nowhere. No, they didn't come out of nowhere. They just changed the name of Al-Qaeda and Al-Nusra Front and the Free Syrian Army. And they called them ISIS and ISIL. Now they're just the Islamic State. And they're going to change the name again. But you see, they're the same guys, bought and paid for by your taxpayers' dollars. If you're in the EU, your taxpayers' dollars spent money on ISIS. They armed ISIS. If you're a U.S. or Canadian, your tax dollars spent money on ISIS. These guys are manufactured. I mean, these guys, just think about it logically. How do people who are dirt poor, who have next to no money, are able to not only afford an AK-47, but enough ammo to fight 10 years of war? How does a bunch of ragtag guys, get enough ammunition and tanks and anti-aircraft artillery to fight? Yes, they can steal most of it. But that ammo, once it's gone, it's gone. Somebody has to be supplying the ammo. These guys, they don't shoot conservatively. They sit there and they spray and pray. Okay, just hand me another one. Don't worry, more's coming in from Saudi Arabia. Now that said, here's where Putin's checkmate is kind of coming into play here. This is why, and if this is what I'm thinking it is, then you will see a Russian crushing of the Ukraine. And be prepared for this. If you are in Ukraine, get out of there. Get out of there. You're about to be thrown under the bus big time. Right now, you have Obama doesn't know what to do. We're going to join forces with Syria so we can go in there and get rid of ISIS, because these guys have backfired on us. Wait a minute, Assad doesn't really want to join up with us. Okay, but Assad's days are numbered and we're just going to go in there anyway. But if I start another war, the American people are going to freak out. Okay, if they join up with Assad, they've joined up with Russia. They join up with Iran to help beat ISIS. They join up with Russia. Meaning, the enemy of my enemy now becomes my, not friend, but my basic blackmailer. Yeah. If you could see the triangle right now, you got Putin here, giggling away, saying, I'll help you guys, okay? You see the people over here going, oh crap, because the people over here, look, tanks are rolling into Ukraine. Look at the bird, hey, what a nice day. I'm going golfing. I can't hear the Russian tanks crushing Ukraine. Yeah, not bad. The economic sanctions. You do something to us, they're crushing Europe with Russia's crushing Europe with economic sanctions. They can't get into a war fast enough. When the Ukraine shuts the gas off on the Europeans, do they get mad at the Russians or the Ukrainians? Hence, a new gas line is going to go around Ukraine. Ukraine is going to be a barren wasteland. I wouldn't wish that on anybody. And this all started with a US, EU, IMF-backed coup. So I'm thinking the biggest checkmate of all is coming in, and that might not even be rolling tanks. It's just going to be we're going to make these people suffer and suffer and suffer. These people have suffered enough. They don't deserve that. And the very people that got it going are going to be the ones when you need them the most are going to turn your back on you. NATO's not coming to the rescue. Maybe Poland might, but then that pulls Poland into a regional war they don't want. And so Poland is going to have to make tough decisions. Do we just let the Russians completely crush Kiev? Again, once the Americans, throw in the towel on this, and they will. It's Obama. Look, they tried to get a war going with Syria last year. They're trying to get a war going with Syria this year so they can get into Iran. But the main guys that they supplied have backfired on them and took back the countries such as Libya, such as Iraq. They're taking it back. You got about 15,000 guys and growing. It was 6,000 guys a couple of weeks ago. Out of nowhere, they call them a different name so that they, people, well, if we call them ISIL and ISIS, our CIA guys are propping these guys up, but at least they won't know that we gave them the weapons. That's what's going on. Like, they can't save face on this one. The only people that can kind of get them out of it, is technically the Russians, because Russia has influence in that area. They got influence in Syria. They can arm Assad to the teeth if they want. They can send in Black Shark helicopters. There will be no ISIS. There might not be anybody else there left. But basically, this is looking like a two-front checkmate that, well, if there's a three-front checkmate, if you really think of it, you're talking the Middle East, the Ukraine, and the rest of Europe via sanctions. All the sanctions that are really hurting Europe right now. Russia's maintaining but the Russian economy's taking a hit. Obama's words, they're taking a hit and they're suffering. They can take it. The Russian economy's never been great anyway. It's under Putin years, it's been a lot better. Putin has done more for his country than a lot of previous, monsters. But again, and I'm not giving Putin a reigning endorsement here. I would never want to live under the Putin regime. And a lot of people say, "Oh, you right-wingers love Putin." No, we don't. Putin he needs to be in jail. He's an evil, evil man. The difference between Putin and Obama, though, is Obama is an evil, egotistical man. Putin is a calculated evil man, where he's just he's like a supervillain. He's basically low key. He's sneaky. He's a mobster. He works like a mobster. Al Capone never got out of with his Tommy gun and sprayed people down. He got other thugs to do it for him. You know what I mean? Like, think about it. Maybe Capone did a couple, but you know what I mean? Like, the most of the work is everything's going to be detached from me. What? My military's in your country? I don't know anything about that. Snicker, snicker. I'll move my pawns. Check and mate. The rest of the world's, and the problem is these bankers are getting very desperate right now. Again. All these trade sanctions are people, countries around the world are starting to trade outside the U.S. dollar. Libya is trading its oil outside the U.S. dollar. That's one way they're funding themselves now. The worst part is not that the funding is no longer coming from through the CIA, through Saudi Arabia. It's the fact that they don't need Saudi Arabia anymore. Saudi Arabia is going to get thrown under the bus as well, which, not that I would miss the royal family at all, but, it is what it is. China, they're trying to play well with China, but I think they just done so many bad things to people over the years that Saudi Arabia is just going to get tossed under the bus. But the Ukraine, yes, is going to get tossed under the bus. This coup was mission failure from day one. It's insolvent now. You have a civil war going on there. You have a defecting factions of the Ukrainian military. You have a parliament that's been dissolved partially, and parts of it that are that are basically threatening to basically overrun it, i.e. the right sector guys, which, to tell you the truth, I think the right sector guys would do the best. Problem is that they're going to kill a lot of people. They will just go straight to genocide. They won't shell. They're just going to basically slaughter. That's what they're going to do. That's, their guys are the guys that are already there fighting on the front lines. And again, you have this big Ukrainian military parade Oh, my battery's dying. Big Ukrainian military parade with newer equipment when it's needed on the front line, where the guys are not being paid well. They're if they get paid at all, they're low on ammo. They don't have the right equipment. The training's lacking. It's a bad situation. Poroshenko is not a tactician at all. You're not going to bleed out the Russians. They can play this game a lot longer. Number one, they've got all the cannon fodder they need. It's just the local residents who are going to fight for their region of the country back, and they can just again train them up, guerrilla warfare tactics, bleed them out, and start out this new front. Okay, this is probably, if there is a new front there, and we'll say because I'm not saying that there isn't. Again, it's just you got to read between the propaganda on all sides. The Russians are saying, no, we're not doing anything, and the Americans are saying the Russians are doing everything. I think it's somewhere in between, right? And I've said that right from day one. You've got special forces of all types on the ground. You've got British special forces. You've got the American special force, or mercenaries, the basically the faculty once known as Blackwater. You've got Mossad guys there. You've got special Polish forces there. You've got everything. You got everything there. So again, and now okay, Ukraine has cut people's retirement in half, but yet they can afford 50 new tanks from Hungary. What's that deal about? You know what I mean? Look at all the again, the trade war. Putin's winning on the boomerang sanctions. He's going to be needed to quail the Syrian crisis again. Again, he set himself up in a perfect checkmate. This guy's a very, very hard guy to counter. Plus, he's probably making money betting against the stock market on all the destabilization. Every time there's a cry of, Russia invading Ukraine, and they don't, the markets react to that. So he's gonna know which way they're gonna react, and he's going, okay, the markets go down, invest now, buy low, sell high. You know what I mean? They get it. He's setting himself up pretty good. It doesn't mean it can't go wrong. I'm not saying, and it's not just Putin. I mean, he's got a gang of guys there really thinking hard on this. Many years in advance of how are we going to play this one out. What are all the possibilities? In Israel, what they do is they get all these military commanders together and special intelligence guys together, and they all come to a consensus, okay, of what's going to happen, and they all are in agreement. They have one guy out of the group that has to disagree with them, that has to, and he has to come at it from a different angle. The most unlikely thing, then you're prepared for everything, because they got caught with their pants down in the 67 war. They didn't expect this. They said, no, they're never going to come across. They're never going to come across. And one guy said, they might, but this is how they might do it. They didn't pay attention to them, and they nearly cost them their country, right? So that's what happened to Israel. So ever since that time, they said, okay, well, let's war game this from all angles. And you have to have one guy that has to disagree with everybody and come at it from a different angle. And sometimes, the simplest answer is usually the obvious answer is usually the simplest one. But sometimes, there's a lot of chess playing there. And I think with this Ukraine. Again, I feel bad for the Ukrainian people. They don't deserve this. Again, it's a rock and a hard place. But I think the problem is that most of these Ukrainians, a lot of them are waking up to what's happening, but they don't know who's doing it. I mean, they don't realize it's the George Soros groups. They don't realize it goes back to the Rothschilds. They don't realize that they've been just ripped off by the IMF bankers, who's basically been stealing everything that's not nailed down. Their country now has Joe Biden's son in charge of the natural gas and stuff like that. I mean, basically, old oligarchs, new oligarchs. Well, these guys they're corrupt, but they're not as bad. Okay, with the old oligarch, pre-Poroshenko, okay, even pre-Yatsenyuk, you were not at war. You're now at war. New boss, same as the old boss. I think the new boss is turning out to be a blunder and worse. Now, you can blame a lot on Russia. Russia has lots to answer for here. Yes, they are propping up the rebels. It's a proxy war. They're doing the exact same thing that the CIA, the U.S. CIA did with the Afghanis, when the Russians were fighting in Afghanistan. They just, the proxies. This is a proxy war. At the top of the chain, it's a proxy war between the East and the West, is what it is. And that's what it is. So you have to look at it from that level, not at the bottom where the fighting is. The fighting is just the sacrificial lambs and the useful idiots. That's what it is, and that's how you have to look at it. And once you start seeing the bigger picture, then it's like, oh, okay, so they're using the Ukrainian country to launder the gold to get back to the Federal Reserve. Follow the money. They're stealing all the resources. Okay, we get it now. The IMF bankers have made things much worse. They're going, and just wait till the bad things start happening. Yeah, yeah, exactly. Like I say, Ukraine is going to get thrown under the bus. It's not going to be pretty. Lots of people are going to really suffer, and there's nothing the world's going to do about it. They're going to turn a blind eye. You will not hear it on the mainstream media anymore, and that'll be the end of it. This was, like I said in the beginning, Putin's line in the sand. You can put up Patriot missile systems in Poland, but you're not going to be able to get them into the Ukraine. Not without a fight. And the thing is, again, I mean, I'm not saying this can't turn into a major shooting war. It can. Because, again, really, at the end of the day, I mean, Poroshenko's just a puppet like Obama. He's just following orders. That's the problem nowadays. Too many people are just following orders. Got to keep my job. I've got a family to feed. No morality, you know what I mean? Very scary. So there's no good guys here. No good guys. Just a lot of victims in between. That's it. And I'm talking both the pro-Russian people, both the pro-Ukrainian nationalist people. The people itself are suffering because of these governments. It's that simple. Well, it's not simple. It's very complicated, and there's a lot of things you can't even factor in. And it's going to get worse. And I think now it's going to get even worse because I think the meeting between Putin and Poroshenko went more like, how do you get me out of this without me looking bad? Putin will say, let me tell you. Anyway, I'll leave it at that. Rate, subscribe, share, comment, like. Maybe this will come to pass. Some things don't. But I was a betting man. Anyway, if you think this video is important, please share it. There we go. G'day, hi, and welcome. Once again, my cat is sleeping. Hey, Gazoo, I'm not keeping you up, eh? Hey, Gazoo, I'm not too loud? You're okay? Okay, so Gazoo's okay. So, anyway, I'll try to keep it down. I won't be too loud. Okay, Gazoo? All right, so I kind of couldn't wait to make this video because last night, Greg Manarino said something that really clicked. And there's a lot of people who have been saying stuff that kind of, you're starting to see a big slice of the pie here. Okay, right now, there could be an extreme checkmate going on. Again, we'll have to wait and see, but if I'm thinking correctly, I think there's basically another coup about to happen in the Ukraine. I think this might actually be Ukraine getting thrown on the bus. Like I said, they would be. You'd have to go back to one of my older updates and look at it when I first started covering the Ukrainian crisis. During the Maidan protests, and I said, look, they're going to throw Ukraine under the bus. This is going to fail, and they're going to throw Ukraine under the bus. So let's backtrack a bit. What's going on? Okay, well, we had Yatsenuk, okay, who tried to quit. It's like, I quit. No, you can't. It's like, but no, I quit. You're not allowed to quit. Imagine that you're trying to quit your job and you're not allowed. So this is the doo-doo they're in. This is how bad it is for them. Okay, so I mean, he's a nut job anyway, but going to try to get everybody killed. The right sector guys are basically getting ready to pull their supporters out of the anti-terrorism, Donetsk area. The Ukraine military is becoming pretty temperamentally destabilized. Not all of them. I mean, the main back. I mean, you have to understand. You're trying to read between the propaganda on all sides, right? And there's a lot of sides here. There's not just one and two sides. There's several sides here. So the right sector guys, they're not happy. They're getting ready to basically, and this is right from the leader's mouth, saying, look, if things don't change, we're going to change the parliament ourselves. In other words, they're going to do a coup. Okay? And then last week, Poroshenko basically dissolved the parliament. So what's that all about? He meets with Putin, okay? Apparently nothing was accomplished, or was it? What I'm thinking is Putin said to Poroshenko, and we're never going to be privy to this, but I'm thinking he says, look, I can bleed you dry, and I don't even have to do a thing, okay? Come to my side. I'll let you save face. I get what I want. You get to, and trust me, he's not going to be able to save face. Considering the other guy that, where is he now? The guy that, Poroshenko overthrew. You know what I mean? Like the guy that, was semi-legit, at least he got voted in at one point. He could have gotten voted out, but there was, a coup is a coup is a coup. And this is why I said revolution versus reset, why revolutions are completely unpredictable. because they're not done through law and order. They're not done through rules. They're done through, well, they use the Maidan protesters as useful idiots, is basically, and they're still there, and the Maidan protesters are also saying, hey, look, these guys didn't deliver what they said, and they're cracking down on us with these Kiev 1 and Kiev 2 groups, which are basically the right sector guys, but eventually those guys are going to turn again. I mean, you kick a dog enough and train it to bite people, eventually it's going to bite you, and that's exactly what's going on here. These people, again, I don't pity them in the sense of, they didn't do it to themselves. But again, not knowing all the facts or who they're up against, and I can understand why. I mean, it's not like they have the the right to the press that we have here. So I mean, all they get is propaganda. But I feel really bad for the Ukrainians because I mean, they don't know what's coming to them. They're not going to know what hit them. And the thing is, it's coming from them at all sides. On Alex Jones yesterday, there was a lady that called in from Canada, and you have to understand, Canada has one of the largest Ukrainian populations outside of the Ukraine, about 1.2 million people. And it's a long story, but basically, Ukrainians started showing up in the 1920s and 1930s during their, the big problems they had over there. And there was a bit of a scare in Canada at the time because they were worried about the infiltration of communism to Canada, because again, we had like a 60 million person population or something like that. It wasn't very high, and to have an influx of people from a communist kind of country was a very, very terrifying thing for Canadians. So there were worker rights groups and stuff like that that ended up in throughout the Western Canada. And of course, there was a political party that got spin off of that. That was the NDP. That's why I say they are communist, socialist communist, because that's their origins. Okay, and a lot of people don't know that. Now you know. So be careful who you vote for. It's good to educate yourself on these things. So anyway, these people settled in here, and you go to Winnipeg, you either got a Ukrainian or you got a native. That's pretty much one of the two. Those are the two populations out there, and. Many people here, of course, as soon as the Maidan protests kicked off, obviously they're up in arms and said, no, we're not going to have this. We're going to have freedom for the Ukrainians. And then you had that, Soros group, one of their endowment groups, I think it was Endowment for Democracy, one of those ones. Victoria Nuland out there giving out, tea biscuits and stuff like that, homemade tea biscuits. And then you had, George Soros funding this, I Am Ukrainian video with that beautiful